Hello, incurable creators, and welcome to this episode of the Podcasting Secret Show. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam, and today I'm joined by Joe Ingram. Joe is a sales training veteran. He has more than 30 years of experience and has personally generated more than $1.7 billion in sales. He's the CEO of Ingram Interactive, which is a leading sales training company. He's pioneered the concept of edutainment, where he blends humor and insight into sales education. And that's a topic that we're going to dive into today and figure out how that applies to podcasting. He's the host of the Sales Genius podcast, and he's been a guest on more than 100 other podcasts. Welcome to the Podcasting Secret Show, where successful creators share their best stories, secrets, and strategies. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joe.
Absolutely, Nathan. Honored to be here. Come on, it's Podcasting Secrets. Everybody should be on this show going, tell me how to do it.
That's right.
Because one of the biggest questions you get as soon as you have a successful podcast is, I want to do one. How do I do it? Right? And you're answering that question, which is phenomenal.
How long have you been a podcaster?
I've been a podcaster for 4 years now. So actually, no, going up on 5. So during COVID is when I was like, hey, can't go and actually train companies face to face. So I flipped everything to Zoom. And then I said, man, wouldn't this just be easier if I said things once and let people listen to it more than once? Yeah. And so that's when I started how do I figure this out? How do I do it? And how do I get myself out there? And now we're in we're within the top 5% on listen notes of podcasts in the world.
Congratulations. So, that's amazing.
Yeah. It was nothing for the first 3 years. So here's one of your first secrets, right? Is that nobody's listening in the beginning and you feel like a fool just recording things. Yep. So yeah, I find it easier bringing other people on with you so you're not as foolish alone. But my first 20 episodes was just me talking into a camera, literally in my garage.
Yeah.
And so
how has that evolved? Why don't you go back and tell us your journey? Tell us your story from the very beginning of podcasting and kind of what you've been through to get to where you're at.
So, okay, perfect. I always thought to myself, I'm like, okay, podcast. I'm an audible learner, so listening always works for me. But I also knew that a majority of people are visually learning. So I knew I had to make it a video as well as just auditory so I can grab both people. And so as I sat down and started doing it, one of the first things I did was I had no idea what to do. I had no microphone. I had no camera. I had a laptop, and I used the internal camera and internal microphone to start recording. Wasn't very well lit because it was in my garage.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the biggest thing to do is to start. Right. And I know it's cliche to go, oh, you just got to go do something. But the answer is, and I tell people all the time, right? Regardless of religious belief, the point is made, right? Even God can't steer a parked car because it's not moving. And the only way you can get better, the only way that you can push something forward and to learn is to take action. And so the second you start, all of a sudden you go, oh, I can make it better this time. I can make it better the next time. I can make it. And I left all those podcasts on the YouTube show and on my podcast channel. And I left them all there just so people can see, wow, that was horrible. So.
Yeah.
But that's how
it's actually, I think it's really good to leave those old episodes up because people can see, wow, he made mistakes too. It's not just me. These successful people didn't start off doing everything exactly right. And it gives you credibility because they realize you've been there and you've done that and you've learned through those mistakes, and they're going to listen more to what you have to say.
Right. And again, I tell people, you know what? It's okay to expect perfection, but you need to only tolerate excellence. And so then the answer is get out there and do something. And then how do I make it better? How do I make it better? And you just keep pushing yourself one level further. right? It's the same analogy people say that, you don't just jump on a bike and ride it. You have to actually get out there and practice it and do it. And a lot of people are too embarrassed to publish what they practiced. And that truly is the most relatable thing, right? I think it was Ed Milet said, you know what? You are uniquely qualified to help the previous version of yourself. So it's not that you have to be perfect. It's just, you know what? 6 months ago, I was more screwed up than I am now, which means whatever I have to say to someone 6 months, that just got to me 6 months ago is going to be beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, I agree with this concept of, if we're moving, it's a lot easier for God to steer us than it is a parked car. And I look back at some dumb mistakes that I made and things that I learned early on in my journey. I remember real early on when I was podcasting, I somehow got an interview with, I think, the top video editing guy at Apple. And
nice.
yeah, I have no idea how
that's the dumb luck portion of action.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so I got this brand new backdrop that I put behind me so I would look super cool, and I set it up and connected it. And then after the interview was over, I realized that it had like fallen, and it looked like this like wrinkly, messed up sheet hanging behind me. It was horrible. I was so ridiculously embarrassed. But you know what? Because of that interview, it forced me to try to figure out the backdrop. And because I failed, I then figured it out, and I've gotten a lot better at my backdrop since then, right? And the act of doing it got me to a spot where I developed a skill and a competency that made me better in that one little area of podcasting, right?
Right. Yeah. My buddy Steve Sims, author of Bluefish, he does podcasts, right? And he was driving down the street up in Malibu. He was driving down the street, and all of a sudden he looked over, and there was this rusted piece of aluminum, like it fell off to someone's shed.
Yeah.
Right. And he pulled over and he grabbed it, and his wife was with him, and he picks it up, and he's like, this would be a great backdrop for a show and stuff like that. And he goes, I'm going to come back, and he couldn't put it in the car. And he was like, I'm going to come back and get this. So a couple hours later, she goes, I sent somebody, don't worry about it. She's like, someone's grabbing it and bringing it. And he's like, okay. Then he says the next day he walks into his garage, and hanging in the garage is what looks exactly like this piece from the ground. He's like, how did you hang this? How did you do it? Then he walked up and hit it, and it was cloth. It was just printed with that. And she goes, isn't that so much easier than having something rusty that'll scratch you and do whatever? And he's like, turns out he's like, oh yeah. So every time he does a podcast, I'm like, hey, hit the metal behind you. Hit the metal behind you. And he's like, stop it. It looks good though. And he hits it. But that was the theme he was going for in the look. But again, it was $12 for this drape thing that she hung up in the background for him instead of going out there. So you don't have to break the bank to do this.
That's right. But you do have to do it. That's how you learn, is you have to do it. Okay. So tell us, along this journey, we've talked about you learned through these mistakes that you made. What are some of the mistakes that you made in your podcast journey, and what did you learn from them?
So in the beginning, right, I was I'm going to assume nobody knows. There's a website called Fiverr, right? FIVERR.com. And that's people from all over the world that do things for $5. Right. And so you go there, and you'll find a lot of people from countries where the US dollar is so much stronger that you're actually paying a month's worth of their wages when you spend $10. So I went out there, and I was like, ooh, this is going to be fantastic. Let me go in there. So I had somebody make me a jingle for like $12 for the podcast in the beginning, right? Then I didn't like it, so I had to do it myself, and then left out words. So I think the first couple ones I was completely off script and did it. And so then it got better as I went through. But I started having people make me a backdrop, make me these things. And one of the biggest mistakes I made was I went out and paid probably $400 for what looks like a backdrop to sit behind me because I'm in my garage. Right. And then so I go, oh, I don't want a plain white wall behind me. So I get this thing. This thing, I didn't even pay attention, was like 15 by 10. This giant arch thing that's supposed to be used for trade shows. So I go grab this thing. It takes up like one whole parking spot of my garage to get this thing built and put in there. And it will only work if it's fully built, right? I can't just drape it and hang it over. So I'm spend all this money to put it in there. And then as I sit down at my desk, and I had a big desk out in the garage, no cars in it because I'm making my podcast studio, and lying to myself the whole time going, well, Bezos started in his garage. Right. Bill Gates started his, and I'm trying to glamorize it to myself instead of just saying, do what you can do with what you got.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm sitting there going through, I fix everything. I get asked to be on some big show in Canada. And I'm like, oh, great. So I sit down, I got everything done. And since my first 5 episodes, I now bought some microphone that was cheap on Amazon that I didn't realize was cheap, and you need the quality. And so I was like, okay, I have that sitting in front of me. And as I'm talking to these people, answering questions, and I'm like, yeah, we're vibing. This is going great. The garage door kicks open, the little one, not the big roll up door, but little one. And in walks my mother-in-law, all 75 pounds of her, barely speaks English. And she comes walking in with a jar because she can't open the jar that she needs opened. So I'm sitting there talking, and you just see her, and I'm sitting there looking at her going, no. And she's just dead on staring at me. And so partway through, while I'm sitting there, you see this jar of pickles come in as she's handing it to me, not realizing that I'm talking to someone on the screen, and I have to take it. And you hear in on that episode, when I popped open the jar, and I was like, okay, great. When then after that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I need an office. I don't care what Bezos did. I don't care about these guys building their business in their garage. I just can't do this anymore. And so since everything had been flipping digital, I went and found, rent real cheap for an office down the street from my house, and went in there. And then from there, I spent way too much money trying to find backdrops. Like, your backdrop is killer. Right.
Thanks.
And if I had done that in the beginning, man, that would have made a difference. Right. But I didn't have to do that in the beginning. Right. I just had to go do it. So I went on Etsy, bought stickers of quotes of things that I say. Like I always say, action solves everything. So then I put that up in the background. I had a little light board, because one of the things I also say is never be normal. Normal people get normal paychecks. And so I don't want to be the guy who's normal. Jordan wasn't a normal basketball player, right? Gates not a normal programmer. So in all of those situations, I always laugh, and I'm like, dude, don't do what everybody else does. You just can't afford to do what everybody else does. And I think that's the problem, is we like a podcast, so we go copy what they're doing, and it's still not as authentically you. And that's what people need to hear. Yeah. I can't resonate with someone who's being fake, because you'll mess up and forget to be fake in certain sections.
And that's why even the opening a jar of pickles, I'm not so worried about even things like that, because that's authentic. It's real. It's life happening to us. And people think that's funny, Right.
But again, if you're the guest on a show going, hey, I'm the guy, at that time, I'm true. Like, I've sold almost $1 billion worth of sales at that point. And I'm like, yeah, I got this. Boom. And it's like, here, open the jar of pickles for me.
You're right.
Yeah.
You lose
and I'm like,
some
this
credibility with that.
Right. And
okay, good point.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the hardest thing that you went through on the journey? The biggest challenge that you faced podcasting, besides the jar of pickles?
Okay. So, right. Besides, yeah. Well, what would have been embarrassing if I wasn't able to open it. That would have been bad, but at least I was able to open it, so I can count it as a win. But, I'm going to tell you, it's the same thing that stops everybody when they go to do anything. The fear of what other people are going to think, right? It's that judgment that you put out. And then I always laugh and I go, do you listen to podcasts? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what's your favorite one? And then they tell you, and they're like, oh, it's this person. And now they have this almost a a friendship with this person they've never met. It's just somebody that they have listened to repeatedly so long, and they're like, hey, I wonder what so-and-so's doing, right? But it's their podcast. And I'm like, what if that person was worried about what their brother-in-law was going to say, or what their mom would say if they put out a podcast? And so I think, again, I go back to one of my catchphrases, which is, right, action solves everything. Go do it. Go put 5 episodes in the can and upload them and let them go. A lot of times just checking off the box of starting is all that anybody needs, but you'll realize if you like it or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pain point, is that somebody's going to sit back, go spend $2,000 now to go and buy this whole setup for doing it, just to find out that you're like me and ADHD, and you go, I did it. Now I'm bored and I don't want to do it anymore. I had to instill in myself this actual, I owe it to the people that are listening to get the next episode out. I owe it to them to get it out there. And I always think to myself, is somebody sitting there and doesn't know how to sell something today? And if I do one more episode, that one episode's going to change them, and off they go, and they'll be able to make more money.
I love that.
And so remove yourself from the equation.
Yeah. And find your motivation to help somebody else, or whatever else that motivation is. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about the fact that you've been on more than 100 different podcasts. Do you think that's your greatest secret for growing your show and reaching as much audience as you have?
I think the biggest growth for me wasn't being on other people's show. It was having people on my show.
So how do you best leverage those people from your show to get you traffic? You get them to share your episodes?
Yeah, they're sharing the episodes. When they come in, so if I do a show and I come in, and before I had nothing, it was just me, right, going in, but I leveraged my network and grabbed people that weren't necessarily, let's say top tier celebrity, right, in their world, but I grabbed them and they had value to share, and I shared them on my show. That gave me a volume of content. And I knew that if it was just me talking, and especially in the world of, I'm going to teach sales, right, people become parent deaf. So then my answer was, I need to grab somebody else, have them be a guest on my show and go through. But I now have access to their network, which I didn't have before.
Because they've shared your show to their audience.
Because they're for their own benefit, they're sharing, hey, I'm proud of the fact I did this show. Go look and see how awesome I was on the show. Yeah. In the meantime, now I am there. Somebody in their network is going, man, I'd love to be a guest on your show. Right? There's somebody in their network that thinks they're better than them anyway, and they want to come do the show just to do that.
Yeah.
And so now I've got this stuff. Like for my show, I'm booked probably 9 months in advance for people to come on. And I do a show once a week. And the trick is consistently let your audience know when you're going to put it out. If you're going to do one episode a year, do it once a year. Let everybody know. But if you're going to do it once a week, do it once a week.
Yeah. So
do it once a month.
Yeah, definitely. Consistency is very important. Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is sponsored by Podup, the ultimate podcasting platform. As podcasters, we're always looking for ways to simplify our workflows, grow our reach, and make more money. What if I told you that there's a tool that combines more than 35 essential podcasting features into one platform? That's exactly what Podup offers, and it's transforming how we create, grow, monetize, publish, syndicate, and do so many other things with our podcasting content. From recording and editing to website building and audience engagement, Podup covers virtually the entire podcasting process. What sets Podup apart is its focus on growth and monetization. The platform includes AI-powered features that help you save time on tasks like creating short video clips and transcribing episodes. It also offers tools for guest management, content syndication, and email list building, all accessible from one centralized dashboard. For those of you looking to turn your podcast into a revenue stream, Podup provides integrated monetization tools that help you market products, courses, and services directly to your audience. What's even better is that with Podup, you don't have to waste time and money switching between multiple softwares to produce your podcast. With Podup, you get all 35 modules within one fully integrated platform and for a fraction of the cost. If you're interested in simplifying your podcast workflow while expanding your reach and making some money while you're at it, check out podup.com. That's PODUP.com and get a free trial of the software. Now back to the show. Okay, you've used edutainment a lot in your show. Can you teach us what that concept is and then maybe take us through the 3 to 5 most important things we need to know to be successful with edutainment?
Of course. Okay. So a friend of mine is Glenn Morshower, the actor. He was like Aaron Pierce in 24. He's been in all the Transformer movies. He's always a general or something. One night we were sitting on a Zoom going back and forth, and he said, Joe, I'm not going to tell you right now, we ended up laughing for like 3 minutes on a live stream. And then he was like, you are the personification of the word edutainment. And I said, man, that means a lot to me. And he goes, yeah. And I go, it would mean even more if you told me what it meant. Right. And he starts laughing. We're like, okay, but it's simply merging education, okay, with entertainment. But the education part comes first. So it's how can you lighten the mood? And I realized this being a sales trainer, going into companies to help them turn around. Like if I start a training with somebody and I got this group of everybody who's been there forever and they know better and it's the way they've always done it. And I got a senior person there. Now I got gray, which just means I can charge more. And so when I look at them, they go, oh yeah, if I can make them laugh, it actually drops the barrier of the ego. And so I know if I say something that's funny and they don't laugh, okay, then I know that they're still sitting like this. They're going, I'm not going to learn from you. I'm not going to learn from you. So I started leveraging, again, I will make fun of myself. I will talk about other companies I went to and how people were treating me or the failure they had. And I throw it out as a third party, but make fun of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, the guy who sells 2 products a month thinks he's the superstar. I was at a company the other day and he's out there holding class for everybody. And he's trying to tell the guy who sells 12 products a day, right, how he does his. And then everybody looks around the room for that 2-car guy who likes to hold school, right? The guy who's selling 2 products. They're like, what? Yeah, that's him. That's him. Right. I don't make fun of him or point him out, but they're all looking going, I know that guy. And then they start to laugh and relax. And as soon as you see them start to giggle and smirk because they're thinking about somebody, then I realize that their ego shifted to the side. And now I can start dropping in nuggets that will help them. And so, but again, you got to put it in. I use funny videos, like prank videos. If you use the videos, I don't know if you ever seen like the Fern guy where he's like out in Las Vegas, he's dressed like a tree and he sits in a pot. So he looks like a potted tree. And as people walk by, he stands up and moves over and you watch people scream, fall over and hit the ground, right? Everybody laughs at that because they're like, thank goodness it wasn't me. Okay. And then as they start laughing and they go through, the room will lighten. And as soon as it does, now I'm like, let's talk about sales. Let's talk about the 4 steps, like, listen, believe, and buy. Let's see how we go through this. Right. And I always joke and I'll go, okay, so if like is so important, I'm going to tell you, have you ever walked into a room and instantly liked someone? Well, besides me, right, when we started this, right? And then so everybody starts to laugh and they're like, uh-huh. And I'm like, okay, but I always will poke fun at myself or the situation to make sure they know it's okay to not sit back and think someone's harping on them. Someone's, demanding things of them, right? We've all had a teacher we hated and that teacher did not make anything fun. They made everything so mechanical and dry. And so edutainment is mixing in humor and fun so that you can actually get your message across.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when we mess up together, that's a great way to bond and build trust. When there's humor that we share together, it releases those endorphins that promotes that social bondness and social bonding and builds that closeness. Um, why else? Why else do you believe that humor helps build trust in a relationship?
So again, a lot of times, like for example, I have clients that I go in and I train their company, right? And then I had an owner stop me one day in the hall. Now, I never met the owner. I was hired by one of his managers, and he stopped me. He said, "You know what? I had another trainer come out and talk to my team and teach them and actually had them do exercises, right, with the new product." And he goes, and here's what I don't understand. He goes, and I want to give you credit. I'm like, okay. He goes, the guys were out with this person longer than they were with you. They physically did activities with the product to learn better. He goes, 2 days later, I asked them, hey, what did you learn when so-and-so was out here? He goes, and everybody goes, oh yeah, it was good. There was, he goes, they can't give me an answer. And he goes, and then I asked them, I'm like, hey, 2 weeks ago, Joe and his team were out here, right? What did you learn? And he goes, and they rattle it off. He goes, but they're always smiling when they rattle it off.
Yeah.
Right. And again,
you made
I will tell you,
memorable
edutainment was
the humor.
Yeah. But again, it's pleasurable and it's a good time. And so that's what happens. Right. And so again, if you want somebody to keep a secret, what do you have to tell them? Right. You have to tell them everybody knows this. Now they don't think it's something special. Yeah. Okay. But if you tell somebody, please don't tell anybody this is just between you and I, it's going to get dropped out because you triggered that part of the brain that says, ooh, this is important. We need to remember it. Not remember the instruction that went with it. It's remember the actual thing I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
And so it's just playing with the chemical reaction of the brain. So the brain thinks a thought, turns it into a chemical comes down in the body converts the chemical into a feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm just playing the game. If I can get you to think happy thoughts, what kind of chemicals go down? Right. And now you are feeling good in the midst of it. And if you feel good, it helps you with retention and helps you know, again, stress is never a great, conducive environment for people to learn.
Yeah. And when there's humor, when someone can make us laugh, it definitely reduces that stress and that anxiety, makes us more relaxed,
right?
Creates an open environment where the trust can kind of flourish.
And if you're not picking on me and we're laughing about whatever it is very bonding. It is, as you were saying, it trips the endorphins, but it also triggers the mirror neurons. The mirror neurons is, oh, everybody's laughing. I'm looking around. The mirror neurons in your brain go, oh, we should do it too. We should do it too. And it all comes back to the fact. And I would much rather everybody remembered, like, have you ever studied at home and you are studying for school and you're trying to learn for a test? Then you go to school, you sit down, teacher passes out the test, you flip it over, look at it, and it looks like it's a different language.
Yeah.
And you're sitting back going, what is this? I don't remember any of this. Oh my goodness, what is this? Blah, blah, blah. Then the teacher ends up, bell rings, you leave, you walk out in the hallway. As soon as you walk out in the hallway, your brain goes, is this all the info you were looking for? And gives it to you. You're like, man, if I had taken the test in the hallway, man, I would have aced it, right? Our brain captures information in the state in which we learned it. Okay. So we learned it in a relaxed state at home while we were studying. When we got to class and we sat down, we were now in the stress filing cabinet. And when you open up the stress filing cabinet, it's all the regular negative things that happen. I tell everybody, like, as soon as you jump out and scare somebody, they immediately tell you about the last time they got scared. They're like, oh my gosh, you scare me to death. My brother used to do this to me all the time and you're like, what? Well, that's because they're in the scared cabinet that they opened up. And that's all the memories that are there. So when I go do trainings, I'm like, okay, here's the deal. When you feel like you've given it every shot you can and you're done, I want you to give up. Don't turn in the test, just turn it over, okay, and give up. And I watch people all the time just take their paper, turn it over, they sit back, and then I just watch the tension melt. And then they go, oh, and then they flip the page over and go answer the questions again. But understanding brain chemistry.
Cabinet.
They closed that file cabinet, went to the relaxed one, and there's all my information that I studied with. It's so bad that to the point of if you chewed gum while you were studying, you should chew the same flavor and type of gum when you go to take the test.
Interesting. Because it puts you back in that zone. It
puts you in that same state.
Yeah.
It helps for memory recall. Just like if somebody makes popcorn in the break room, you smell it, right? You immediately go back to a time prior to now that triggers with the memory of popcorn.
Yeah, that's right. You made a comment a few minutes ago where you talked about if you're humorous, as long as you're not making fun of somebody. And I think that's really important, because sometimes people make jokes and try to do humor at the expense of somebody else. And if you do that, you're probably not putting them in a zone where they're going to trust us more. You're probably not putting them in a zone where they're going to like us more. Am I thinking correctly on that?
100%. Because again, what if I was to make fun of you, Nathan, and start picking on you, then everything that comes out of my mouth is going to be filtered by defense. Mm-hmm. Right. And then great. Hopefully whatever information I was teaching you was in a defensive situation, so you would remember it. But again, you're going to put the block back up.
Yeah.
Right. If you hated me and something I said in the beginning where I picked on you, made fun of you, or said something contrary to what you believe, you literally would stop listening to me. You'd hear me, but you wouldn't listen. And what does that do with everybody? And that's where I always tell people when it comes to sales, right? The issue is you are not listening to what they're saying. You're listening for the chance to speak and go through. And a lot of times you don't have to. But
wait, what'd you say?
In every situation, I'm sorry?
What'd you say?
Just kidding. Exactly. Exactly. And so, but that's what most people do. And again, I want you brought it up brilliantly that you can't attack someone, because even if you just pick on one person who volunteers to be picked on, everybody else in the room is worried that you're going to pick on them next.
Okay. So if I'm going to do humor, I can do humor at the expense of the situation. I could do humor at the expense of myself. But if I'm going to make humor related to somebody else, it needs to be humor that builds them up, right? Is the exaggerated
Correct
about how amazing and awesome they are and smart and brilliant and
right. But again, always, if you want to poke fun about something relevant to what's now, do it as a third person.
Give me an example.
I was at a company the other day, or I did a podcast with someone the other day, right? And the whole time that I was talking to them, there was this booger hanging out of the nose of the host. And several times I told him, I was like, bro, is this video or is it only audio? Is it whatever's there? Okay. And so at that point in time, we can make fun of, as you laughed, you were like, man, that would have been embarrassing. So again, that puts us into more of a bonding thing going, oh, that poor guy over there. It's still funny because we aren't experiencing it, but we can attach the humor to it on the other side, which I made that up completely. So that's when you look at that. Okay, great. That's an example of me throwing it third party, somebody other than. And at that point in time, everybody goes, ooh, okay, always check your nose before the next podcast.
Yeah. I'm like looking at my nose, making sure.
Exactly.
Is he trying to tell me something here?
Right. Exactly.
What other tips and advice can you give us about being humorous in our podcast?
So the things I like to do, and it's natural for me. I think sarcasm was like my second language. And in my family, it was always about everybody picking on everybody. So I notice things that other people miss. And so I can notice certain situations. So I go for situational comedy. And I will always tell people, oh, and it's not about I'm going bum bum at the end of everything I say. Please don't do that. That's horrible. Okay. But to me, the answer is make fun of whatever the situation is. Make fun of how somebody did something wrong so that you can drive home the point about what's right. So when I sit with people and I'm training them on things, I'll say, look, the worst thing you could do would be this. Let me tell you what this guy did. Right. I had a sales guy do this and he told me, come watch me. And then he did this and he did this and he called the customer stupid and said, and I go, you can't say you'd be stupid to pass this deal up because all they heard was you just called me stupid. Right. Yep. And then everybody starts to look around and I go, because all of you guys would be stupid right now not to listen to me. Right. And then everybody laughs at that situation. I created the situation to poke fun at. Right. And highlight to them because they all stopped and went, did he just come? Hey, I get what you did there.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's how you get it going and move forward so that everybody feels like it's okay to joke. I will make mistakes intentionally. Okay. I will go through and butcher a word that I know how to say. Okay. And I'll say it wrong, or I'll intentionally put emphasis in the wrong ones. I don't know if you ever watch Family Guy, but it's always a running joke when I'm like, well, it's because I like Cool Whip, and Cool Whip is my favorite, dessert topping and things. And then someone will always look and go, why do you emphasize the H? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then everybody laughs because most people have seen the episode, so they get it. And so, but those are the kind of things that you can bring up, things that people can relate to. And
kind of be part of an inside joke.
Right.
Okay.
And that, again, brings connection.
How have you monetized your show?
So monetizing my show, I actually, on my show itself, I have people that pay to be VIPs to be on the show with me so that they can ask questions directly of the guest as opposed to just listen or watch.
How much do they pay to be part of that?
So I originally started my show as not for public. It was just strictly a show, and it was a group just for sales training. It was a private group, and I was charging people, what was it? I made it $99 a month to be part of it. And then I said, if you want to be a VIP, then it's an extra $50. Now it's just $49 if you want to be a VIP on screen, and it's limited to those. Some people buy a subscription for the whole year so they can join every week and be on there. But a lot of times it's people that also have shows. And so they come on the show because they wanted to learn how to better sell their products and services, but they also want the guests to be on their show. And so rather than just sending a message going, hey, heard you on Nathan's show, right? Podcasting Secrets, I think you'd be a great guest. If someone was on this with us and was asking questions, and at the end of it, when we were done, they were like, Joe, I have a show. It'd be so great if you would come on my show. We've already established a connection. So we leverage that and monetize to that goes through. And then I use Spotify, and Spotify will drop ads into the show periodically.
I love it. That is not a monetization strategy I have ever heard before. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Joe, I appreciate that and all the rest of the value you've added to this episode. If our audience has enjoyed what you've shared and they want to learn more about you and your work, what are the best ways for them to do that?
The absolute best way is to go out on the web. Why? Because that's where everything is, right? And go to thegeniuslinks.com. So GENIUSLINKS, thegeniuslinks.com.
Perfect.
So,
and if they want to learn more about your show, where?
My show is The Sales Genius, everywhere podcasts are hosted. It's my shiny happy face as the moniker. So if you look at it and it's not this face, then that's not it. So
perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Nathan. Thanks for asking great questions.